Good evening, guys. It is Saturday night. It is Pontificating with Pete on Revolutionary Change. I hope you're all doing well. It's going to be a doozy tonight. We're going to have some fun. I got some really juicy information about somebody I really don't like in politics. I'm going to leave that to a little bit later in the show. Not all the way to the end, but, something that will keep you all in anticipation of something very fun and dandy that I did happen to come across regarding how certain people are paid, what they're paid to do, and the fact that they pretend like they're such innocent bystanders and everything that they do has a just cause. No, it doesn't. It's just about getting paid, and that's pretty much it. And if that means completely sacrificing the United States of America in the process, hey, somebody's going to get the loot. Might as well be a traitor to the country, or traitors, I should say, because there's plenty of them to go around. And so I usually like to start in an area that isn't necessarily where everybody, jumps on board right off the bat. But I think it is very important that we talk about what's happening right now in the state of Michigan. This election is very important for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which is AIPAC is going all in on Haley Stevens because, let's be honest, they have no choice. They cannot allow somebody like Abdul El-Sayed to win the primary election and then become a real national political figure. And I'm on record as saying that if we fully understand the machinations of our two-party duopoly that exists before us, and clearly it's a system that has to die, keep in mind that if Saeed is able to win the primary election, which right now my gut feeling tells me he's going to win. And the reason I believe that is because I believe Haley Stevens is just an atrociously bad candidate. I actually think Mallory McMorrow would have been more viable, in my opinion, especially to the shit lips. And maybe she is, and probably would have been. Nevertheless, I do believe that Haley Stevens is somebody who nobody could genuinely get excited about, and rightfully so. And I believe that this story is important to cover because, as many of you know, AIPAC has now dumped at a minimum $60 million additional dollars into this race behind Haley Stevens. And if that's not enough, the Congressional Black Caucus has endorsed Haley Stevens. Now, I don't know why they feel the need to get involved in this race. I understand that Black community interest is very important in the state of Michigan, especially when we're talking about places like Flint, when we're talking about Detroit. These issues matter. However, make no mistake, we cannot allow there to ever be anyone, especially those that are pumping up the two-party system, to get away with continuing to prop up a system that is predicated on corporate special interest money, whether it be Israel, big oil, big pharma, you name it. They all want you to pretend like this is not directly affecting our daily lives, especially when they choose candidates strictly based on whether they're in the pockets of those major entities that not only run our country, but frankly run the world. And so now we're faced with a real prospect of, are they going to do everything in their power to kneecap El-Sayed? And the answer is yes. Even if he were to win the primary, I do believe that the Democratic establishment, without question, will sabotage his campaign and work relentlessly behind the scenes to get Mike Rogers elected as the next GOP senator from Michigan. And that would be an unbelievable turn of events. As we have said before, and we'll say again, I am not convinced that there is going to be any way to stop Susan Collins now in the state of Maine after what they pulled with Graham Plattner. And that's not to say that Plattner did not have skeletons in his closet or legitimate allegations brought against him. But that's what the legal process is for. Mob rule, there's a reason why we're a constitutional republic. So things like that should not be able to happen. In the Democratic Party, it happens all the time. And now you're going to find out how much the Democratic establishment truly hates working people if Saeed is able to pull this off. Now, as we know, he has done a couple of rallies with Bernie and AOC over this weekend so far. I believe he's got a couple of more tomorrow. I'm not going to disparage him in any way for choosing to go down that path. I think it's a smart move because, frankly, not even so much AOC, but Bernie Sanders is very popular in Michigan. I mean, everything really changed in 2016 when he endorsed, not endorsed, excuse me. When Bernie won the Michigan primary in 2016, that's when I thought he could win. I actually thought he could pull it off. Little did we know that the Democratic establishment would go to the lengths that they went to ensure not only that Bernie would get kneecapped and lose, but that it inevitably would lead to the election of Donald Trump. And they are prepared to do it again, perhaps at the Senate level. But it proves that if you think, and this is a message to Ro Khanna in particular. If you think you can become the presidential nominee of the Democratic Party and not be backed by corporate special interests, you're on your own, pal. And so would everybody else be wise not to support that initiative, because we know how this game ends. We know how superdelegates operate. We know how corporate media operates. We know how the corporate money operates. And this is not going to change. Now, can a potential victory like this be pulled off? Yes, I think it can be, for two reasons. Stevens is that bad, and El Said is that good. And so here we now see one of the key reasons why that the Congressional Black Caucus decided to endorse Haley Stevens. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you don't pay attention. The Congressional Black Caucus's silent partnership with AIPAC. I would say this is a pretty big deal. The influential group of lawmakers has damaged the reputation as conscious of the Congress, they're the conscience of the Congress? Yeah, sure they are. By staying silent on the Gaza genocide. And boy, oh boy, have they stayed silent. Let's look at that picture real quick, if you will, Colin. See, guys, sometimes there is something to be said for using very powerful imagery, using the imagery that one would think is about Black liberation. But when push comes to shove, as you can see here, there is this little thing called the Israel lobby hanging over the heads of the Black Caucus and many others. But this one was a favor that was called in. You will endorse Haley Stevens for the Senate or face repercussions. Let's scroll. More than a year has passed since the ICJ, the UN highest judicial body, issued its first order in the landmark case brought against Israel by South Africa, which contends that Israel has been committing acts of genocide in its war in Gaza. The ICJ found that with respect to the right of the Palestinians in Gaza to be protected from acts of genocide and the rights of South Africa to seek Israel's compliance, South Africa's case was plausible. Plausible, a restrained word that in this context fails to convey the harsh truth that war Israel has been conducting, it's not a war, it's a genocide. Palestinians are being starved, displaced, and slaughtered. More than 60,000 Palestinians have died, probably 600,000. Again, rule of 10. That is pretty much what we're looking at right now. And 1.9 million are being brutally displaced in a manner eerily similar to the dispossession of their forebearers in the Nakba of 1948. By the end of September, according to a group of international food aid organizations, more than 600,000 Palestinians would be experiencing famine. Explain to me how hundreds of thousands are not going to die from that. They will. A completely preventable calamity marked by extreme food deprivation, acute malnutrition, and starvation-related deaths. Have you seen the chickenpox epidemic that is now hitting Gaza? Since the IC's ruling, a growing number of genocide scholars and human rights advocates have concluded that the genocide in Gaza is not merely plausible, but actual. In early September, an overwhelming majority, 86% of the voting members of the International Association of Genocide Scholars, voted to endorse a declaration that Israel's policies and actions in Gaza met the legal definition of genocide in Article 2 of the UN's Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And this was from 1948. Hint, hint. The UN's own Commission of Inquiry, Physicians for Human, reached the same conclusion a few weeks later. Rabbis and Israeli human rights groups, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights have testified that their own nation has betrayed the solemn pledge, never again. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and other groups have witnessed the appalling deaths, displacement, and famine in Gaza and issued the same indictment. Israel is committing acts of genocide. Yet to this day, the Congressional Black Caucus, the long-standing core of lawmakers dedicated to safeguarding civil rights and known as the Conscience of Congress, has not issued a formal, where are you, Colin? You're all over the place. There we go. Declaration condemning Israel. It hasn't even produced a statement calling for a ceasefire. The CBC's silence isn't accidental. More than half of its current 61 members have been endorsed or funded by AIPAC, the powerful U.S. lobbying arm of Israel's agenda. Don't forget, there's plenty others, not just AIPAC. In the 23-24 cycle alone, AIPAC endorsed 26 of the caucus's members, raising $4.6 million for them and another $3.5 million for Black Democratic candidates. By accepting AIPAC's endorsements and money, the CBC's members are, to use a biblical phrase, selling their birthright for a mess of pottage. AIPAC readily sets aside the political concerns of the CBC in its efforts, spending lavishly on campaigns for GOP members of Congress, targeting measures on racial, and I believe that that's where it cuts off because it is a paying subscription, but you get the idea. This is a very serious problem, and it is a bigger problem because now considered one of the taboo safeguards within the Democratic Party is that you don't speak ill of the Black voter or the Black voting demographic. Even though Debbie Wasserman Schultz is attempting to pull that bullshit right now in South Florida and expose just how hypocritical they really are. Now, granted, the CBC has stayed out of that race, but make no mistake, they are counting on being able to usher Debbie in there because in the end, she is one of the main conduits to the Israel lobby. And as such, she brings in a lot more money than the other candidates running in the race. And in the end, isn't that all that really matters with the Democrats? So whether you believe this is legitimate discourse or not is up for debate. But here's what we know for certain. That when we look at somebody like Haley Stevens, and you look at somebody who, frankly, when she talks, it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. This is what she had to say in response to Abdul El-Sayed having the rallies this weekend with Bernie Sanders and AOC.
You have this rally tomorrow with Sanders and AOC for your opponent. There are a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are looking for that progressive kind of movement.
Yeah.
How would you try to bring those people in?
I'm just curious if Mr. Sanders is willing to acknowledge the great work that I did alongside President Obama on the auto rescue.
She sounds like she's from somewhere like North Dakota, trying to talk like Frances McDormand in Fargo. That's what she sounds like. She doesn't sound like she's from Michigan, and I know quite a few Michiganders, so that accent, somebody who's from Michigan in this chat, please inform me if I'm wrong, but I don't hear Michiganders talk like this.
Just himself gotten into the United States Senate, and I don't remember him being around for the auto rescue, but I certainly remember our sleeves being rolled up to save the 200,000 Michigan jobs, to stand up for working people and to do the right thing. And I'm also really proud of the record that I have.
I'm sure you are. But you see, lady, you're actually a lying sack of shit because as it turns out, and I had this conversation with a friend of the show, Nina Turner, a little earlier. Bernie Sanders voted against TARP for a reason. Would you care to guess what that reason was? I'm going to tell you guys what it was because I've got the notes. It turns out that Bernie Sanders did vote down the TARP initiative, but there's a reason. As it turns out, and this is going back to the bailout for the auto industry in 2009, 2010. Bernie Sanders' record regarding the auto bailouts is defined by his 2008 vote for a standalone auto bailout bill, contrasted with the subsequent votes against the broader Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, that ultimately provided the funds used to rescue the auto industry. 2008 standalone auto bailout. Sanders voted in favor of a standalone measure to provide $14 billion in direct aid to U.S. automakers, which ultimately failed to pass the Senate. Sounds like they had enough money right there to take care of the problem. But the TARP opposition, he voted against the massive $700 billion TARP legislation, arguing that the middle class should not be forced to bail out Wall Street billionaires for the financial crisis. Gee, that's a very inconvenient truth that Haley Stevens is certainly not going to mention. But there's more. Because the final auto rescue was funded through TARP, his opposition led to political debate about his commitment to the industry's survival. Let's be honest. If this were real free market capitalism, the auto industry would have died. Because that's free market. But they got the bailout. The American people didn't get a bailout. And millions upon millions of them lost their homes, lost their livelihoods, even lost their lives. But hey, let's not let a soundbite get in the way of the actual reason why this went down the way it did. The Bernie Sanders of 2015 and 2016 was a special candidate. Very special. In fact, Zohran Mamdani's run to the mayor's seat was very reminiscent. It took a decade to get a candidate to run like the Bernie of 15 and 16. But it finally happened. And you know what happened? He won. He won bigly. But don't worry, Ms. Stevens has a little bit more bullshit to throw.
You know, I have been recognized as the most effective lawmaker for Michigan because I write laws and I pass laws and I make a difference. You know, I'm not in the complaining class of pointing fingers. I'm in the class of winning tough elections, of making sure someone like Mike Rogers in the state of Michigan here, this is a toss-up race. It is.
Okay, so you can already tell that she's full of shit, not just because she probably has to pinch a few out, but here's the reality. Dotting I's, physical movement, lack of concentration or confidence. She cannot stand on anything in particular. She's just throwing platitudes out there. Again, this campaign would be dead in the water if it wasn't for the $60 million infusion from the Israel lobby that she just got, including the Congressional Black Caucus's endorsement, including the Emily's List endorsement. This is not coincidence. This is legitimately pointed fact as to why this goes down. And let's be honest, Mallory McMorrow dropping out of the race, that was done at the behest of the Democratic establishment to boost Haley Stevens. And you know how this works. You know that the talk has already went down. We appreciate you, Mallory. We won't soon forget you. You're another Pete Buttigieg. You're going to get a nice cushy job once we're back in the White House. That's how the game's played. It hasn't changed, and it's not going to change. We'll finish it out.
Is not a guarantee. And this is why it's frankly been so important that, you know, we go through a rigorous Democratic nominating process. We haven't seen Mike Rogers campaigning, but we have heard him saying that he wants to go to the U.S. Senate to rubber stamp Trump. He's not going to rubber stamp Michigan. He's not going to stand up for us when tariffs are wreaking havoc on our pocketbooks and our small businesses. He's not going to stand up when people are getting kicked off their health care and their utility bills just continue to go up and the billionaire class gets to run away with everything while we all pay more. He's not partnered with my friend Joe LaRussa, who's not even in necessarily a partisan role. But I work with my local leaders to make government work for the residents and the people of Michigan. And I think that's what this moment is all about.
Yeah, that's a bunch of word salad crap. But as you can see, there is a reason that this goes down the way that it does. And there is this is actually kind of funny, but I want you all to see exactly what her yard signs look like. This is unbelievable. Stick it to them. Oh, yeah, she's really sticking it to just about everybody. I mean, this should not be lost on anyone. It's almost like a fuck you right to your face. Stick it to them. Yeah, stick it to the working class, which are going to suffer mightily if they're foolish enough to support you. I certainly hope they don't. But this is a really bad look. Like an incredibly bad look. But I wouldn't expect anything less from a campaign that does not know what they're doing. So, be it as it may, they're gonna continue to wheel her out and presume that she is capable of doing this. I don't believe she is. I think she's like I said, a pretty lousy candidate in a lot of ways. And if you're going to do a sign like this, hey, have at it. That's the plan, Mehdi. That's what we want to do. We definitely want to stick it to her. That's what we're trying to do. I did have Colin, do me a favor. I am having an internet issue right now. I'm not able to send you anything. I thought that this clip that I had sent you earlier and went through, it turns out that it didn't. There was a clip of Abdul El Sayed with Jake Lang. It's like a minute long. I definitely want this. I want people to see the difference between a candidate who understands what it means to actually be a leader and be somebody worth supporting versus the bullshit that's in front of us with somebody like Haley Stevens. I think it is a sort of a seminal moment if you can elect a Muslim to the U.S. Senate in a state like Michigan, no less. I mean, you could say what you want about Dearborn being the largest Muslim population in the United States, but Michigan is a swing state. It's a controversial state. And to even have the prospect of him being elected, and the numbers bear out that he's in a pretty good spot. And as I said, I believe he's a very good candidate. And I believe the fact that Haley Stevens is very bad, that's a big deal. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I missed it. So we do have it. Okay, so I want you to see the difference between a good candidate and a lousy candidate. Here's what a good, if not a great candidate does.
Persecuting me.
We're gonna clap him out. The reason I wanted to clap him out to USA is because he doesn't hate me. He doesn't hate AG. He don't even hate you. You know what he hates? He hates America. He hates the idea of what America was always supposed to be. Of the people, by the people, and for the people. Where it should not.
Don't think it's lost on me or anybody else that he is an exceptional orator and he's channeling Zohran in the way he talks.
Should not matter the color of your skin, should not matter how you pray, should not matter who you love, that you can be fully in 100% America. He hates that America. He wants America to be small. He wants America to be like him. He wants America to be hateful. He wants America to be a place that does not include. And every day that we go out there and we knock on those doors, we make an argument about what America actually is. An America that is bigger than his hate. An America that is bigger than the small-mindedness that he brings to this. An America that has a bigger heart than the one that he has. An America that is bigger than a Donald Trump who thinks that some people don't get to belong here because of their color of their skin. An America that is bigger than the idea that we all can come together and pray how we choose or not pray at all. An America that is bigger than Mike Rogers and the corporate corruption that they all take to run these campaigns to pick our pocket. The America they believe in is one where a few people who look a particular way get to siphon off your money to make billions. That's the America they want. That's the America he represents. That's the America he's so mad he didn't get. And as much as that's an ugly display of the America they want for us, this here is a beautiful display of the America we can yet build.
I think he's really good. And in the end, what I and Jen had said regarding Zohran when he was running, way before anyone was catching on, I said, he's got something. There is this inherent capability that when you're on the stump, when you have the ability to inspire, and Abdul El Sayed has the ability to inspire, and that's why he's trending to win. Haley Stevens doesn't inspire anybody other than corporate donors, because they know she's a puppet and will do what she's told. It would almost be too fitting for her to be taken out this way because of the way she got in the first place, the way that she upended Andy Levin when all of the Zio scum came in behind her then. because Andy Levin, who is a liberal Zio, wasn't pro-Israel enough. He actually condemned what was going on. It's amazing how this all comes full circle. Sometimes the arc of history takes a while to get to, but we're getting there. We're getting there. I think he's got a shot. And I will let you all know right now. As a matter of fact, on Monday night, Shama Sawant will be back for the stretch run to promote her campaign. I also would like to let you guys know, and we're going to make a post on it on Monday, the billboards have officially gone up in Seattle. So hundreds of thousands of people are going to be seeing them over the next 3 weeks. This is a critical election. We cannot miss this. All these elections matter, but this is a big one. August 4th is a huge day for Abdul al-Said and for Shama Sawant. And I believe for Cori Bush in Missouri as well. So let's make sure that those that are not bought and paid for by corporate special interests and those that are adhering to the will of the people are able to do it. That's our job. And so the influence of the Israel lobby is very real. We know this. We know how detrimental they are. But we also know that they are causing a real big problem. And guys, if you haven't smashed that like button yet, please make sure you do. Let's get this out there to as many people as possible. I assume that many of you did watch the interview, or at least clips of the interview between Joe Rogan and Vice President JD Vance. Now, this was a very important interview for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which is that while there's a lot of bullshit that you have to weed through in these types of conversations, because let's be honest, Rogan really doesn't push back, especially on those that are kind of in his camp, so to speak. But the topic of Israel did come up. And he said some things that I thought were very, very telling. Especially because, and we're going to get to it, why he's telling it the way that he's telling it. He's a shrewd operator. He's not clean by any means, but he is smart. I'll give him that much. So here's what went down.
I definitely think you have seen this very discreet, extremely well-funded campaign to try to derail the negotiation and try to derail the deal. And, you know, there's this Time article that came out yesterday. A friend sent it to me. It's like worth reading because it lists a bunch of people who have quite literally been paid by a former Trump campaign person who was himself paid by certain elements within the Israeli government.
Now, the person in question that he's talking about is Brad Parscale, and we are going to get to him. There is an article that I am going to pull up that you guys will be able to dig in a little deeper on. Colin, cue it, please. Just have it ready. We have always said that the money motivator is what gets people to do things in politics. This is not a new thing. This isn't going to change anytime soon. We're working on it. But when, in my opinion, someone who is a favorite to become the next president of the United States is talking like this, and while it may just be lip service, the fact that it's being discussed is a big deal. To even intimate that there is a paid network of influencers on behalf of the Israel lobby. And we're going to get to one very special person in that group in just a moment. But there is more to this.
And those people are attacking me viciously for quite literally trying to accomplish the negotiation objective that the president set for the country. So
what is their position? Like, are they attacking you how?
Oh, it's social media posts. It's, you know, they're leaking to reporters. They're attacking me obsessively, saying that we should not be negotiating with Iran. We should just keep the military campaign going indefinitely. And that is their explicit position.
And make no mistake, and this is what we've often said, the reason why they want to continue this is because they're never in danger. The people who are screaming the loudest from the mountaintops that this is the position that should be taken and this is the direction they should go in is because their lives are generally not in danger. But don't worry, that could be changing, and not a moment too soon. But remember, Vance is a chameleon. He's going to do what he has to do in order to further his political career. Now, if you were to ask me, who do I think is more dangerous, JD Vance or Marco Rubio? No questions asked, Marco Rubio. It's not saying much, but it's saying enough to understand that Vance understands where the winds are blowing and where they're going. And that's why he's saying this.
Coming after me saying that, people have come after me and say that I'm influenced by Qatar, that I'm influenced by foreign governments, that, I take my marching orders from Tucker Carlson, and there's just so much bullshit out there.
Well, you don't take your marching orders from Tucker Carlson, but you do take them from Peter Thiel, and that is a fact.
When what I'm actually trying to do is accomplish what the President of the United States told me to accomplish, which is a settlement of this that accomplishes our objectives. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. We have the free flow of oil and gas. And like, I should be clear, I don't actually mind. I don't mind that let's say certain elements of the Israeli government want to criticize the deal or have disagreements about the deal. I don't even mind an effort to try to influence, foreign governments try to influence the United States all the time. Israel does it, other countries do it. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. What bothers me is actually when Americans meaning American leadership, allows that influence to affect their judgment. And
you're talking like you want to do away with corporate special interests in politics. And let's be honest, guys. I would imagine that if JD had an opportunity, he probably would like to do away with it. I don't know how. Do I think that there are some that are enamored with the idea of just being around all that wealth and nonsense? Yeah, probably. But I also think there are people who are just sick of it, who do not want to have to deal with all the, kissing the ring, kissing the asses of all these over wealthy, overtly despicable people. I don't get the feeling that Vance is that guy. He just doesn't give off that vibe. So, yeah, I think he's being a little bit candid here in terms of how he feels about the current system and wanting to see it change. But is he going to do anything about it when the prospect of being president is on the table? No, of course not. Like I said, sleight of hand.
To affect what they are advocating for. That's what really bothers me. People are always going to try to influence the United States of America, whether they're allies of ours or whether they're enemies of ours. But again, when I open up the pages of Time magazine and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing, and oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways, my response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first.
Well, that's what he says. But that, again, like I said, he's giving you lip service. He's telling you what you want to hear. But what are you prepared to do? Are you prepared to go against the president? Are you prepared to go against the Israel lobby? Full stop. Are you prepared to conduct yourself as Thomas Massie has been conducting himself? I haven't seen any indication that you are. I think you are concerned that Marco Rubio is going to get the billions of dollars to fund his campaign from the Israel lobby. In fact, he probably knows already that the Israel lobby has made a determination between him and Rubio as to who they're going to back financially, and the decision has been made that it will be Rubio. So he's got to find another path. Maybe he's willing to go scorched earth. I would love to see it. I'm not expecting it, but he is dancing around a very important issue here. And that issue is as follows. Who exactly is he referring to? Who is this person that is overseeing this operation? It turns out that the person in question is a guy named Brad Parscale. And this is from Time magazine. Trump's ex-campaign manager is running an Israeli influence operation targeting the MAGA base. So this is the douchebag in question. Yeah, he looks very intimidating, let me assure you. Okay, let's keep going. After the U.S. and Iran agreed to a ceasefire deal, funny, on June 17th, a senior U.S. official was monitoring the online reaction when they noticed something surprising. President Trump's aides had expected his supporters to celebrate the agreement. Instead, online influencers in Trump's MAGA movement were excoriating it on social media. One shared an Israeli op-ed titled, "You could have been the greatest president of all, but you failed." Several posted the same video of Qatar's prime minister appearing to snub VP JD Vance in Israel, arguing it showed regional powers dismissing the Trump administration's naivete. Others accused Trump of surrendering before achieving his stated objective of eliminating Iran's nuclear program. Many of the posts appeared almost simultaneously, with similarities in language and tone. The official began collecting screenshots and came to believe it wasn't a coincidence. Tracing tweets by prominent members of the online right, the official came to believe there was an unlikely figure at the center of all this criticism: Trump's former presidential campaign manager and digital guru, Brad Parscale. Last September, the global ad agency Havas hired Parscale's firm, Clock Tower X, to conduct a digital campaign on behalf of the state of Israel, according to Foreign Agents Registered Act, FARA. Filings reviewed by Time. Under the agreement, Parscale's operation would produce 100 original pieces of content each month, with at least 80% aimed at Gen Z audiences across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and podcasts. In a services agreement draft included in the file, Parscale pledged to amplify the campaign across social media and through integration of narrative messaging into the Salem Media Network properties and aligned distribution channels. Referring to the Christian conservative evangelical Zionist conservative broadcasting and publishing company, where he serves as chief strategy officer, Parscale vows the effort would produce at least 50 million digital impressions per month, as well as influence how AI tools such as OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, and Google's Gemini characterized Israel in the war. For all this, Israel agreed to pay Clock Tower X $1.5 million per month. Publicly, the campaign was framed as an effort to combat rising anti-Semitism online. An Israeli foreign minister official familiar with the arrangement says there was another strategic aim: preventing young conservatives from turning against Israel. Too late for that. According to the official, Parscale presented himself as uniquely positioned to improve Israel's reputation among young conservatives. He stressed his experience at the helm of Trump's political operation, with a grasp of both the architecture of the modern internet and the political movement Trump had built. His position at Salem, whose radio stations, websites, podcasts, and digital properties were part of the conservative media ecosystem he promised to mobilize, was a boon as well. Parscale acknowledges that the operation was intended to prevent young conservatives from drifting away from Israel. He says neither he nor his firms played any role in turning opinion against Trump's objectives. "I have never funded, organized, or participated in any effort to undermine President Trump, ever, including his MOU or ceasefire proposal. The claim that I am coordinating an effort to prolong the war is completely false." Bullshit. "The only people manufacturing a conflict between President Trump, Israel, and me are anonymous officials using background quotes to make me the boogeyman." No, you are just registered under FARA and getting paid $1.5 million a month by the Israel lobby. But it's all coincidence. Coincidence. Three people familiar with the campaign describe a messaging operation run through a network of interconnected firms overseen by Parscale and other firms he owns or created, such as Campaign Nucleus and Influenceable, in which he now owns a minority stake. Through private group chats, they say conservative influencers receive suggested language for posts on social media sites such as X, Instagram, and TikTok. They were then compensated based on the impressions and engagement their content generated. On its website, Clock Tower X says it has developed an influencer ecosystem that includes managed networks that amplify narratives through credible distributed voices. It remains unclear how much Parscale's outfits paid creators as part of the Israel campaign. Another recent Influenceable campaign offered influencers a base payment of $2,250 plus $1 for every 1,000 views, up to 2 million views, allowing influencers to earn as much as $4,250 per post, according to internal text messages reviewed by Time. People who participated, most of whom asked for anonymity, feared reprisals, rejected the suggestion that there was anything improper about the practice. Parscale says none of the money from the FARA registered contract has been used to pay influencers, arguing that doing so would require them to disclose the source of their funding. He says other Christian organizations, again, just call them Christian Zionist already. Christian Zionist organizations hired his firms, such as Influenceable, to support Israel in the wake of the October 7 attacks, but declined to identify them, of course. And here comes the really juicy part that I've been waiting to share. One of the conservative figures associated with the campaign was Ayal Jacoby, a recent college grad with a popular X account who began working with one of Parscale's firms about a year ago. He says after testifying before a House committee about anti-Semitism on college campuses, Jacoby says neither Influenceable nor any other firm has ever compensated him to promote views that he did not already hold. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Of course you feel this way, but you're going to get paid to do it. That's the sweet part. It's not like an agency that represents you. An official with Influenceable says Jacoby has participated in numerous campaigns on issues related to Israel. Ayal Jacoby has worked with Influenceable as a paid influencer, but never on behalf of the Israeli government. Yeah, like you, to even say that, why don't you just stop at the beginning and then move on? The executives say, insisting none of their influencers have been paid with foreign money. Jacoby declined to comment further. Of course he did. The Parscale-led effort continues, but neither the Trump administration nor the Israelis appear happy about how it's going. Prime Minister Netanyahu Milikowski has hired Parscale to improve the nation's standing among conservatives, only to watch support continue to erode on the American right and across the broader U.S. electorate. We are pissed at Brad Parscale, says the Israeli official familiar with the arrangement, who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. He was supposed to make things better. We have paid him lots of money. But what did he do with it? Things have only gotten worse. Gee, you think maybe he pocketed quite a bit of it? I'm sure he did. According to the Pew Research Center, favorable views on Israel and Netanyahu have fallen since last year. Only 32% of Americans now view the Israeli government favorably, the lowest level in decades. In April, Pew found that Republicans with a negative view of Israel ticked up since last year, with 57% of young Republicans having an unfavorable view of Israel compared with 50% a year ago. Global anti-Semitic incidents, meanwhile, have surged 34% since the Iran war's outbreak, according to the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement's Anti-Semitism Research Center. You would be hard-pressed to find any other reason in this moment to question whether or not they're losing at all. They can throw as much money at this as they want. They can continue to convince people that if we just did enough PR, we can convince people that this is acceptable discourse. We're that close to our Greater Israel Project. Actually, they're not. And now that they're saber-rattling with Turkey, not smart. But I wouldn't expect anything less from genocidal maniacs who have never been put in their place. But now things are starting to change. Now, you didn't think that this was going to go unnoticed by the people in the Israel lobby, did you? You didn't think for a second that there wouldn't be some type of repercussions for those statements. Colin, can I please have Little Ben's clip, if you will? It turns out, and if you haven't smashed that like button yet, guys, please make sure that you do. And Josie, thank you for that point. Brad Parscale was involved with Cambridge Analytics. That should not come as any surprise. Now, here's where things get very interesting. It turns out that little Ben is highly connected in this entire operation. Not a surprise. But here's where it goes. Colin, I don't see the clip, but just make sure you have it, please. Now, I want to do this in two parts. You're looking right at it, Colin. I sent it to you. I told you I sent it earlier. I'll check again. Just give me a minute. And I also need the Leah files when you have a second. That's the other one. Actually, as a matter of fact, we'll start here. I turned into Joe Rogan yesterday and heard Bernie Sanders' economics, Barack Obama's foreign policy, and Ro Khanna's conspiracy theories. And then I realized JD Vance was talking. I want a candidate in 2028 who doesn't mirror the Democrats and who can win. Mr. VP, this is not the way. So you can imagine he's already prepping to make sure that Marco Rubio gets the support. That's what they're going to hang over his head. They are going to make sure that he does get that. Now, why that's the case, I'm not 100% sure. Now, I do believe, and again, I'm going to send this clip to Colin again, so just give me 1 second. But Ben had a lot to say regarding JD Vance. And again, why would this come as any surprise to anybody? Because again, Mr. Shapiro has a way of being in control of everything that goes down. Now, if you're looking for a person who kind of connects all of these dots, Colin, can you pull up the tweet that I sent you from Leah Files? It's sort of a map. This kind of gives you an idea of how this goes. That was from Pascal, but yeah, the Leah Files one, if you have it. Yeah, I think there was a power surge here. Now, if you want to understand Brad Parscale's Israel influence operation, as you can see here, this is exactly how the money moves around. But it goes without saying that when you don't know for certain, this is not a clip. This is a tweet that I sent to you from Leah Files. If you need me to do it again, I will do it again. Just bear with me for a second. Man, this connection is really bad. Yeah, so just hang tight, folks. There was a big storm power surge that came from earlier. So hopefully this is going to go through. This is also what happens when I am kind of flying solo here in this moment. Let's see. Yeah, I'm getting an SOS here. So, Colin, if you could just look up Ben Shapiro, JD Vance on X. It's about a 3-minute clip. It should come up. So let's pull this out. And if you guys, again, this is what happens when you go live. Sometimes these technical issues will come up. And some of the stuff that I have sent over today. Yeah, I saw the thing with Trump basically claiming that the elections were rigged. I can't get into that shit. I just can't. It's a waste of time. We all know elections are rigged, but they're never rigged the way that they tell you or the way that they're actually done. Because again, it goes against empire. They're not going to go against empire. Frankly, if we're looking back on it now, the country would have been a lot better off if Trump was reelected in 20 instead of 24. I think we can all safely say that is, without question, something we would have been a lot better off with. And the fact that we're where we are right now, it doesn't help. But what I do want to say, and like I said, there is a really substantial connection here when it comes to all of these people that get connected into the pro-Israel network that is going to go after JD Vance, and they're going after him because they know that Marco Rubio is a safer bet. That's the way this goes. I'm going to read to you Leah Files' statement while Colin cues up the clip. Ben Shapiro is their enforcer. Question Israel, and he comes for you, Tucker Carlson questioned it. Shapiro called him a super spreader. Candace Owens questioned it. He went to war on her. This week, JD Vance touched the Epstein intelligence story on Rogan. Shapiro was attacking him inside 48 hours. Then there's Charlie Kirk. What started my entire follow the money on Shapiro, and it's dark, in his final weeks, Kirk started questioning Israel. A pro-Israel billionaire named Robert Shillman, we've covered him before, reportedly pulled $2 million out of Turning Point to punish him. He routed it through a fund that erases his name so the check can never be traced. That same Shillman built Ben Shapiro's career. In his own words, with a pen and a checkbook, I provide ammunition. And it isn't just Shillman. The Wilkes brothers, the fracking billionaires who funded Shapiro's Daily Wire, also funded Rob McCoy, pastor, Kirk's own pastor, whose son worked inside Kirk's operation, Mikey McCoy. So Charlie Kirk wavered from the pro-Israel cause, and weeks later he was dead. Ben Shapiro was then handed the opening slot at Kirk's own convention and used it to call Israel skeptics frauds and grifters. Now the part he hides. Shapiro doesn't just take their money. He's invested in Israel himself. He is the largest shareholder of an Israeli company that makes COVID vaccines in the pill form. And he is the founder of a fund pouring money into Israeli tech. But he doesn't tell his audience this. I wonder why. Little Ben has some concerns about the commentary of the vice president.
So here's what I would not like. A Republican who sounds like a Democrat. I don't want a socialistic big government. I don't want economic policies that could come straight from Bernie Sanders. I don't want a foreign policy that sounds like Ro Khanna or a conspiratorial view of the American meritocracy that reads like Zohran Mamdani. I don't think if a Republican takes those positions, he's likely to win either. So why am I worried about that? Well, because yesterday I watched Vice President JD Vance on Joe Rogan's show. Let's just say I have some concerns. I'll explain in a moment. This.
Oh, little Benny has concerns, guys. He's got a lot of concerns.
Is the Ben Shapiro show. Joe Rogan's show. And as always, the VP is charming and he's articulate. I've met him. The vice president is a very nice person. He's genial. He's funny. Obviously super talented. You don't end up vice president of the United States.
Remember, he's got to kiss his ass because in the possibility that Vance still is able to become the nominee down the road, Shapiro's got to kiss ass. So that's what he does. He's got to maintain the Daily Wire long enough to get some sucker to buy him out. Remember, that's what he's trying to do right now.
States in your early 40s without being a very talented person. Usha, his wife, is a delightful person. But now it's time to get down to brass tacks. Would we like a Republican Party that is essentially a horseshoe Democratic Party? I'm asking because that's kind of what the VP sounded like on Joe Rogan. I'm not sure what he's doing. Now, listen, I want the Democrats to lose, not because I don't share their jersey, but because I do not share their fundamental principles. So I'm looking to support candidates who, number one, actually oppose Democratic policies, and two, can also win. So first, opposing Democratic policies.
No, actually, you want somebody who supports the state of Israel. That's your goal, because that's what you're paid to do. And it's probably your ideology through and through.
A Republican Party that is essentially a horseshoe Democratic Party. I'm asking because that's kind of what the VP sounded like on Joe Rogan. I'm not sure what he's doing. Now, listen, I want the Democrats to lose, not because I don't share their jersey, but because I do not share their fundamental principles.
This is the same clip, Colin. So anyway, it's unfortunate. There was a lot more to this that I wanted to share because he really dug in on this. Colin, I specifically said that if you just go to X and you put in Ben Shapiro, JD Vance, and what should come up, just look up Phantom Pain. There's a 3-minute clip that's right there. It should be like the first thing. If that's not going to work, then so be it. But I can't be any more clear than that. It's right at the top. And Shapiro, I mean, while we're at it, every time I see him, I'm reminded that he's got to get smashed in the face. We simply cannot have a show without him taking it. And naturally, he's going to take it.
You think you're better than me, Bo? You think you're just hanging here all day, you're higher than me, you're better than me? Yeah, well, I don't miss you. You're not. I'm a father. I can think that you are not better than me at all. Yeah, I'll teach you.
He's going to get it. Now, when he gets it, I don't know, but I am confident that he is going to get his comeuppance at some point. He has to. I mean, how could he not? I mean, this is a person who gleefully talks about blowing people up. He is 1,000% a foreign agent. He 1,000% prefers Israel to the United States. He has said so as much many times before. This isn't breaking news. He's made it very clear that his support is conditioned based on who will suck off Israel the hardest. Now, if you ask me, as one would guess, and I think this is it, credit to Jen, he's got some really small dick energy. Probably has a small dick on top of it. And he's just a rather big dick of a person. But that's him. And I gotta tell you, there's a reason I've been hard on Colin about getting this clip, because you all need to hear this shit. If you think you're pissed off at Ben Shapiro, you're not pissed off enough yet, but here it comes.
So here's what I would not like: a Republican who sounds like a Democrat. I don't want a socialistic big government. I don't want economic policies that could come straight from Bernie Sanders. I don't want.
Colin, I'm going to say it one more time, and I'm getting upset now. Let's be very clear. I just told you the name of the clip. I want you to look up. I cannot make this more clear. I want you to look up Phantom Pain. That is the name of the account. Phantom Pain, Ben Shapiro, JD Vance. That should be it. We have to play this clip. This is a very important part of the story. I cannot make, again, I would have taken care of this all on my own if it wasn't for a bad connection, guys. But unfortunately, there was a major storm where I am, and it knocked out, it basically, I'm working off of Wi-Fi right now. And if for whatever reason, I don't know why it works this way. It's very weird, but I cannot send clips. I can send messages. I can do it directly through the apps, but for whatever reason, text messaging can't be done. Don't understand it. Very weird. But this clip is very, very important because it gets to the heart of why Ben Shapiro is such an evil bastard and is a representative of the entire ideology. Why these are very dangerous people that if we do not get out of our crosshairs, they will drag us to hell with them. JD Vance sits down for an interview and talks about how he's not pro-war. Now, do I think in his heart of hearts that he's pro-war? No, I don't. I don't think he's pro-war. I think he just goes along with it because that's how it is. I think Marco Rubio is pro-war. I think little Ben Shapiro is pro-war. If anybody is looking to help Colin, if he can't find it, Phantom Pain. That's the name of the account. Colin says he's got it. Yeah, there we go. Somebody figured it out. Because somebody, thank you for aging Floor. Thank you very much. And Phantom Pain. That's how it's done. Yeah. Ben Shapiro is the bane in all of our existence. And as I pointed out with what Leah Files pointed out, this guy is an exceptionally well-funded machine. Now, he's clearly in a very tricky spot now because the Daily Wire is falling apart, much like Turning Point USA is falling apart. But he's going to try to use every tool at his disposal to remain relevant in this political discourse that we're involved in. Remember, he lives a very high-class life, and he could not possibly expect to live any less than an elite, because that's who he is. And he hates regular people. But he's also somebody who, a time or two, has suggested that everyday people should be sacrificed for the betterment of Israel.
Faced with the fact that his MOU was just a bad deal, the vice president then fell back on conspiracy theorizing about how everyone who opposed him is naturally in the pay of the nefarious Israelis, which is just dummy stuff. I'm sorry, it's stupid. It's dumb. Well, here's the vice president doing some rather conspiratorial, silly talk, citing an article, by the way, from Time magazine that was essentially planted by his allies in the first place. Well, here's keep it going indefinitely. I've argued for bombing Cargill and bombing South Pars and getting the hell out. So MOU.
I mean, this motherfucker really is something. Like, I've argued for bombing those people and then getting the fuck out before they can retaliate. Why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? You're such a bloodthirsty little fucker. And yet, I never hear anybody who talks like this ever say, heck, give me the weaponry and I'll go do it. Because I believe in it that much. See, he would press the button, but he would do it from dozens of miles away. He's a cuck coward of the worst kind. And I'm so sick of people who think he's worth listening to. And in the end, he probably really doesn't have a very big audience anymore. But here's a guy, clear as day, arguing for committing war crimes, for committing crimes against humanity, blowing up innocent children. He's doing it right now. He's saying, I argued for this. JD Vance is saying, that's not a good idea. Yeah, but you should do it. I mean, he's evil. Pure and simple.
Died because Iran is Iran. And the people who oppose the MOU also because Iran is Iran. The MOU. And when faced with the fact that his MOU was just a bad deal, the vice president then fell back on conspiracy theorizing about how everyone who opposed him is naturally in the pay of the nefarious Israelis, which is just dummy stuff. I'm sorry, it's stupid. It's dumb. You know who opposed the MOU? Anyone who had an ounce of brain power with regard to how Iran acts in the Middle East and has been acting for full on half a century. It's just silly talk. It's silly talk. Well, here's the vice president doing some rather conspiratorial, silly talk, citing an article, by the way, from Time magazine that was essentially planted by his allies in the first place.
I definitely think you have seen this very discreet, extremely well-funded campaign to try to derail the negotiation and try to derail the deal. And, you know, there's this Time article that came out yesterday. A friend sent it to me. It's like worth reading because it lists a bunch of people who have quite literally been paid by a former Trump campaign person who was himself paid by certain elements within the Israeli government. And those people are attacking me viciously for quite literally trying to accomplish the negotiation objective that the president set for the country. So
What is their position? Like, are they attacking you how?
oh, it's social media posts, it's, you know, they're leaking to reporters, they're attacking me obsessively, saying that we should not be negotiating with Iran, we should just keep the military campaign going indefinitely.
Keep it going indefinitely. I've argued for bombing Cargill and bombing South Pars and getting the hell out. So, I mean, there's that. But again, this idea that everyone you don't like is in the pay of your opposition is just silly. That article.
No, you see, everything that is in the opposition to the interests of the United States of America is being paid. You are being paid, and all your cohorts are being paid, and you're being paid a lot of money. There is a lot of money to go around because ostensibly our budget, our military budget, our defense budget has earmarked countless contracts for the likes of pro-Israel causes. It is essentially our money that ends up in your pocket to push this bullshit, to push this genocidal nonsense that our hands are soaked in blood as a result. Yes, everyone who opposes the state of Israel is on the level, and everyone who's in favor of it isn't. They are an enemy to the United States, and you're one of the biggest. If there is justice in this world, you're going to get some before it's all said and done. It will not be quick and it won't be pleasant. But Ben Shapiro is an enemy of the United States. He couldn't make it more obvious. Let's say we carpet bomb Carg Island. You think they're just going to take it? You think there won't be retaliatory actions? You think there won't be devastating effects as a result? Let's say we bomb Carg Island. Maybe we never get to use the Strait of Hormuz ever again. And then we'll really be in an economic depression. There's a lot more than just crude oil that comes through that strait that we need. And as I've said before, and I will say it again, if we do not do away with the state of Israel in this country, we will be finished. Because the rest of the world is telling us that we're finished if we don't break away from them. And this fuckhead right here is doing everything in his capacity to make sure we go down with that ship. And remember, this is a class war. So if shit really gets bad, what do you think he's going to do? He's not going to stay here. He's going to jump ship and leave the country. He'll go to Israel or Argentina or Cyprus or Thailand or who the fuck knows where else. Because he has the ways and means to do it. The average person, fuck him. Fuck the goyim. Fuck the pores. Like he did going after Ian Carroll because he was a pizza delivery driver. Much like the way Jen feels about getting her hands on Laura Loomer, I feel the same way about little Ben. Completely.
In Time magazine, by the way, doesn't even say that. It was planted by, quote, a senior U.S. official. Who could it be? I don't know. It's so mysterious. A senior U.S. official plants a piece in Time magazine about how there is some sort of paid operation against him. The only person who is named is Trump's former presidential campaign manager and digital guru, a guy named Brad Parscale. Brad Parscale is literally registered. I mean, this is not a hidden story. He registered under FARA. And he himself denied having been a part of any of this. And by the way, if he had paid anyone to actually go and make those posts, they too would have had to register under FARA. So again, this is just conspiratorial nonsense. The reality is that the MOU did not die because people in the United States were opposed to the MOU. The MOU died because Iran is Iran. And the people who oppose the MOU also because Iran is Iran.
The hate of men will...
I must say, this douchebag, there's a reason why we have a video that we punch him in the face. And I can't help it. Because if this is the closest I can get for the foreseeable future of being able to do it myself, now what the heck? Let's punch him one more time.
Oh, yeah, I'll teach you.
Good. And believe me, Ben, I've been in my fair share of fights. I fear how much I'd hurt you if I actually were able to square up and get you, because I would give you everything I had. And if I put you in a coma, then so be it. But somebody's got to do it. I got to tell you, though, it would not surprise me if he has bodyguards. That if whenever he goes out, he is flanked by security detail because he understands how hated he is. I think he has to have a clue. He can't be that naive. But the walls are closing in. I really don't. I don't know how he thinks that this is going to end anything other than bad. And I do mean really bad. it will end badly, Ben. You're not walking away from this. And eventually you're going to have to figure out how you're going to get out of this, because this country ain't having it anymore. We're just not having it. And even when one of the, I wouldn't even say that Patrick Bet-David is an acolyte of Ben Shapiro. He's his own thing, which is pretty disgusting. But he has a very large platform that is a grifter's extraordinaire, as we know. Very favorable to Israel. He's one of those Iranians who is all about capitalism, the worst kind. So naturally, he's in favor of regime change, dismantlement of society, pro-Western democracy, as he puts it. But he's been very much on board with pushing the narrative that the biggest problem is Islam, it's China, and it could be Russia, but it's certainly not Israel. No way. Can't possibly be Israel. But he brings on two members of the CIA, and this conversation took a very interesting turn.
Give you 4 countries to be paranoid about. Which of them would you give the biggest percentage all the way to the smallest? So you have these 4 categories. You have Islam. Okay. So within Islam, we have IRGC, Qatar, just include all of them. We have Israel, because, you know, Israel is also coming up a lot of different places. Then we have China and we have Russia. Where does your paranoia lie the most for the next 10 years with these 4 different countries as well as Islam? Just rank them in order and give like 45% would be Islam, 25 would be this.
Yeah, so China takes the massive chunk of pie for me. China is the #1 strategic threat to the United States.
What did you put on China?
50%.
Okay.
Islam, I gave 5%. I'm not worried about Islam. There are other countries that need to worry about Islam, but we're not one of them. Russia, I gave 20%, and then Israel, I gave 25%. So I am actually saying we should be more paranoid of Israel than Russia.
Now, I will say this. This gentleman is probably as correct as you can be if you just flipped to and kept the percentages where they are. I would say Israel is 50%. I would say China's 25. I would say Russia's probably even less than 20. But somewhere in that neighborhood, let's just even give him that. And we'll just say Islam is 5. I'd say that's probably about accurate. And I do think that there are things from an international perspective that we should be concerned about, but there is no question that Israel is our biggest concern. Now, needless to say, this is not what Patrick Bet Star of David brought these guests on to do. Again, these are spooks. These are people in the highest levels of intelligence telling you where the real problem lies. Now, of course, they're being somewhat tepid about whether they're going to truly go after Israel the way that they should. But even this is an incredible admission, and he doesn't know what to do about it.
Islam, 5 times Islam.
5 times Islam.
Let's start off with Islam first, and then we'll go to Israel. Why did you put Islam the lowest out of all of them at 5%?
I don't see Islam as a threat to the United States. And that's what I was seeing it as. Paranoid to me. Right? What am I paranoid? It's not Islam. Islam is it's difficult for them to reach us with any significance. When they reach us, it's difficult for them to bypass our security systems, whether they're cybersecurity systems, police systems, border security systems, etc. Meanwhile, Israel actually has the ability to drag us into all sorts of shit that actually does impact us. We are all paying more money for oil right now because of Israel.
Now, this is what we talk about at great length on the channel. The thing about the Strait of Hormuz that makes essentially Israel the end game for the United States, as Iran would have it. We have 2 choices. We either give up Israel and save our economy, or we continue down the road with Israel and lose our economy. There's a reason why they're frustrated that they got dragged into this by Israel, because now they've basically backed themselves into a corner and they don't know how to get out of it. And that's what this member of intelligence is telling us. I think he's hedging his bets by continuing down, the traditional road of saying it's all about Red China. But he's kind of throwing it out there that, yeah, Israel's a much bigger problem than we're willing to admit, even to an audience like this, which has given the Hasbara narrative 24/7 because that's how Patrick Bet Star of David makes his money. He's got more to say.
We are all suffering under an international outcry against American leadership because of Israel. The whole world questions whether or not the president of the United States is even making his own decisions or whether he's a puppet of Israel. So Israel has an incredible ability to frustrate and put us in quagmire that Islam just doesn't have.
Okay, so what's the worst thing that Israel could do to us? Go a little further. So because you put 25%, that's a real threat. You put it bigger than Russia and Islam. So what are some things they could do to us?
So I'm not worried about Israel sending a bomb into New York. If that's what you're worried about, we're worried about different things. Israel could easily launch a false flag operation that sends us into a war. They can have an Israeli who poses as a Palestinian, who goes in and causes some kind of crazy shit in Syria, and now all of a sudden the entire United States is engaged in Syria because of something that Israel set up as a false flag. And that is
exactly why we need to cut off this relationship. And I do think that there is a lot of truth to that in his statement. But if there's one thing we know for sure, Israel's historical pattern from the USS Liberty to 9/11 to October 7th, false flags, that's what they do. That's their modus operandi. They've done it many times over, but those are the most obvious examples. And as such, we are being told, point blank, right now, that this is what we're in for if we don't deal with them properly. We're trying. We're doing every which way we can to deal with them properly. But it's not enough, which is why we're called revolutionary change. It's going to require that in order to fully break away. But we're getting there.
something that the Mossad does all the time. They do it very well, very eloquently. They already selectively share intelligence with the United States. And the reason you selectively share intelligence is to create the opportunity for misdirection or malintent. So Israel's already involved in these kinds of operations at a very high success rate. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about them backstabbing the United States. I'm concerned about them undermining our national interests. I'm concerned about them choosing, like they did with Iran, to escalate rhetoric about a certain issue that's more important to them than it is to us, that then goes on to affect us.
Okay, perfect. So then the infiltration of Islam.
Guys, did the screen freeze? I need a hand. All right, let me try this. Colin, are you there? Okay, so guys, we lost Colin. Like I said, this has been one very interesting evening, to say the least. So we're going to have to wait until he gets back, hopefully soon. And this has really been, I got to tell you, I was like really excited about tonight's live stream, and it has basically been one rocky road trip the entire way. Yes, I understand that, but it wasn't me. It turns out it was Colin. Well, no, I took Colin. I didn't allow him out of the basement, so we'll see what happens. Here's what we're going to do in the interim till hopefully he gets back. We are going to get to the super chats because you guys are awesome. So Patreon.com/revolutionary change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a supporter of our small but mighty, despite heavily suppressed, yet still growing channel. And also remember that we are on Substack, Instagram, Rumble, and TikTok. And there's our link there as well. So let's give a big shout out to our super chatters. Pirate Justin with the $2. Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Fuck AIPAC and free America. Couldn't agree more. Jim Talib with the $5. Thank you very much as always, my friend. Easy peasy. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. I really appreciate it. And if that's not enough, easy peasy gifting 5 Revolutionary Change memberships at the top level. That's $10 a month. That's a $50 gift. Thank you very, very much. And for those who have received that gift membership, we appreciate you being here. We hope you'll consider staying on board. And of course, it goes without saying, when a channel is suppressed the way that ours is, the way we are able to survive and thrive is because of amazing supporters like yourselves. Pirate Justin with the $5. Argentina, South Israel is playing Spain for the World Cup final tomorrow. Who are you supporting? Gee, take a wild guess. Free Palestine. Noria with the $10. We appreciate you. We appreciate you too, my friend. Again, every contribution makes a difference. Pirate Justin with the $5 didn't want to say anything until she was safely on U.S. soil, but got my younger sister a flight out of Israel this week to the USA. She is ex-Zionist. Great to hear, my friend. And sent her our best. Libertarian Social Dem, been a member for 9 months. Appreciate you, my friend. If you think Loomer is evil, please talk about Amy Meck, who is the head of the anti-Muslim organization called RARE, who is the mastermind of the Sharia Free Caucus. I know who Amy Meck is, that little Zio, I could say it, Zio cunt from Long Island. Yes, I am very well aware of that psycho bitch. Libertarian Social Dem with the $1.99. Do you think that Brandon Stratka is a paid Zio shill? I can't say for sure if he's a Zio shill, but he's a paid shill. There's no getting around that. Donna Vorsi with the $10. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your support. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99. Types like PBD who always emphasize they are a family man and a man of faith as a masquerade who probably are not faithful to his family. Bingo! The louder you preach, the more I'm inclined to look into your closet. Alex got mittens with the $2. May God bless everyone here. Thank you. Thank you for being here, my friend. It is always good to see you. And we also have Skedward Bobby with the 5 Canadian A super sticker. Thank you very much, my friend. And finally, Hot Dog with the $5. I'm feeding the squirrels in my backyard because I want to start a squirrel army. So far, 4 squirrels, not very disciplined, mainly just eat peanuts. You got to give them acorns. And eventually they will come back. And you can train them and teach them, and they'll do amazing things. You never know. And Piano Man with the $10 super sticker. It is always a pleasure. And obviously, we very much appreciate your support. I think we are about ready to get back into the action. Colin, just give me a thumbs up in the chat or in the private chat. Let me know that we can get back to business. All right. So let's continue where we were with Patrick Betts, Star of David, who probably, listen, I don't want to believe in any of this Zionist voodoo magic that might come our way. Who knows? Maybe they kick Colin out for a few minutes. We'll see.
We're on to escalate rhetoric about a certain issue that's more important to them than it is to us, that then goes on to affect us.
Okay, perfect. So then the infiltration of Islam, some say, to EU and what's happening to a lot of those countries, UK, Germany, you're seeing it all over the place. And to the point where documentary, Rupert Lowe did a paper, the 250,000, stories of girls being raped in UK, 87% being Pakistanis and Muslims. And then seeing what's going on in the US right now with New York City, Mamdani wins, his 3 individuals that also won. So that's not going into the financial capital of the world in the States. Do you have any concern of them? They're infiltrating the United States in the future?
Is this guy seriously out of his fucking mind? Like, honestly, I can't see a scenario in which he's not being paid to say this. There's no conceivable way that he's not being paid. It's not possible. He's talking about Zohran and the people he elected as Islamist terrorists, essentially. Is that what he's implying? Because that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, I may be overreacting a little bit, but I don't think so. Islamic penetration of the United States. It's the last line of defense. It is the last true line of defense for the Zionist cause. It's all they have left. Anti-Muslim bigotry. That is what they're counting on. They are counting on that being the reason why Zionism will continue. And I'm here to tell you that we will do everything in our capacity to make sure that it does not. But PBD is a paid shill, pure and simple.
So here, this is another thing I think is very interesting, right? Islam is the only thing on this list that's not a nation state.
It is.
It's a religion.
That's right.
I'm not worried about a religion. I'm worried about people, and people identify sometimes as a religion. But it's interesting to me that we're actually weighing nation state threats against religious threats. So when we talk about Islamic people in New York, I don't see them as a threat just because of what they believe. That goes against American values. I see threats as nation states and transnational threats that self-identify, like Al-Qaeda, right?
Or Ben Shapiro, if we're being honest.
So I don't see Islam and Islamic people
and
as
if you, but if you notice, I put it as consider it being IRGC, which is all the proxies, and consider Qatar, which Qatar is funding a lot of different things in the States. If we were to qualify it that way, would your opinion change?
Possibly. I think it would change in how the number breaks down based on what we qualify.
But break that down from the Israel standpoint. So you put 25% Israel threat and you're paranoid about
Correct.
them. What are different things that they can do to harm us?
Israel can hack into our cyber systems. They can hack into our core water, power grid, you name it. I mean, China has hacked into our personnel records for the military. Israel is far more capable than China is in terms of cyber capability.
And there you have it. This is one of the key differences. China has the ability to disrupt, and they have. But Israel has the ability to destroy us. China competes with us economically and even militarily. But there is no comparison. Which is why, like I said, I thought that this intelligence agent was being a little sleight of hand in terms of, how he would talk about China being the biggest threat. But in reality, what he's really telling you is that Israel is the biggest threat to the United States. I don't think PBD had any clue that this conversation was going to go this way, which is why he's trying very hard to direct it in another way, push it in another direction. And it's not working. So credit where credit is due. But it's like I've said before, it's kind of the way I feel about Tucker Carlson. And we'll get to him in a minute. I believe Tucker is intelligence. And I believe that Tucker deals with intelligence on the regular. And I believe that there are a lot of people in intelligence who are not evil, manipulative bastards. I believe that they are fully aware, keenly aware of the detrimental direction this country is going in right now. And they are trying to sound the alarm before it's too late. And that, to me, is what this CIA agent is doing right now. He's telling us, he's giving us the blueprint. There's a reason why they are pushing so very, very hard for data centers, for AI influence. This is all MO from Israel. This isn't competing with China. This is about fortifying Israel's position. Look at all of the people who are in this. Look at how the people of this country are rejecting it versus those that are embracing it. It truly is the haves versus the have-nots. And the haves obviously have, it's a very small group, but they've got mostly everything. And everybody else is just trucking along, pretending like our economy is not going to collapse if we don't deal with this problem. This is why our channel focuses on this primarily every single time. Because in the end, it is all about weeding through the bullshit and focusing on the tangibles that really matter. And this matters. This matters very much. Let's finish it up.
They learn their cyber capability from us. They can rent their cyber capability from Russia. So when we talk about cyber attacks, space-based attacks, when we talk about influence campaigns, propaganda campaigns, the top of the list of capability is Israel. It's not all strapping bombs and flying in planes. It's much more sophisticated. It's sophisticated enough that they can cross a border into an enemy country and launch drones, right? We underestimate Israel's capability constantly. I don't know how many times you have to see pagers blow up before you realize Israel is far more capable than we believe they are.
Do you see them as an ally?
I see them as a country that is out for their own best national interests. And when you align with that, you're on their good side. And when you don't align with that, you're not.
And that's all of it. He basically said in no uncertain terms, is Israel an ally? The answer is no. But he did it in a diplomatic, political way of saying, no, they're not an ally. In fact, they're our biggest enemy. And we know that. You want to know how I would join the U.S. military? To fight Israel. I still have an itch to serve my country. I probably always will. But if it was for that cause, yes. Because it's the future of the United States. That's what's riding here. And as I said, PBD got a little too cute with who he thought he was bringing on. And it turned out to be a complete misfire, as it should be. And hopefully this clip will do well.
Specific to Bibi or Israel, period?
I think it's both, but Bibi has taken it to the next level because of the corruption issues that he's also stuck in. There are multiple intelligence surveys out there that talk about how Israel cannot be trusted as an ally to the extent that, say, France or Italy or Germany can be.
And in that case, I think he's being a little too generous about that point, about whether or not the real issue here is comparing sort of apples to oranges as far as who is an ally and who is not. And I think the thing that we have to remember, you have to be able to read between the lines. Somebody who works in intelligence is only going to tell you so much. He's going to lead you to a point. But he's only going to take it so far. He is not going to be the person who is going to solve the problem. He's going to give you all the cues. And in this case, he intimated that China is 50% of the problem and Israel is 25%. If you listen to what he's actually saying, he's basically saying China is a little bit of a problem. I don't even regard Russia as a problem. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about with Islam being the problem. But essentially, Israel is all of the problem, with very rare exception. China is part of the equation because they can compete with us economically. But in terms of everything else, it's all Israel. And that's what he said. And that's why PBD was squirming the way that he was. And credit where credit is due to whoever clipped it. Definitely made a difference. And so, should we be fair? Fair enough to say what is the truth regarding Israel's influence? Have they had a heavy hand in a lot of things that we've done here in the country or around the world, for that matter, that have been to the detriment of the American people and the people of the world? Yes, I believe they have. If there is a person that I personally would love to have on this podcast, it is Roger Waters. I would very much like to be able to speak to him. First and foremost, to tell him how much I appreciate all that he's done, not just how much he's given back to the world musically through Pink Floyd, but how much he has given back regarding his activism And I understand he's a rough and tough guy. He can be a complete asshole, as people have indicated. But I don't give a fuck. I just care that he cares, that he has grown impatient with the bullshit of the world, that he is so determined to make that difference, and that he gets on fellow artists and people in his position. This is why I get on Springsteen as hard as I do, because Bruce has the same platform, if not bigger, than Roger Waters has. And he could be saying something, but he doesn't. He's been silent. And to me, that is an even greater sin than coming out and saying, I support Israel. At least you have conviction. Not saying anything tells me that you're not in favor of what they're doing, but you're too cowardly to speak up about it. But Roger Waters has never minced words. He has never been afraid to say what is needed to be said. And that, as much as anything, should be commended and appreciated. And here's what he had to say with Tucker Carlson.
It didn't fall down because it was burning aircraft fluid or because an aeroplane flew into it. It fell down because it was demolished. And the question is, who placed the explosives in it? Who pressed the button? Who demolished the World Trade Center? And
now, he went on specifically to talk about 9/11. And I see a lot of people talk constantly about, well, there is proof that the steel beams, especially at that age and what the building had been through, that due to the jet fuel burning, it could actually bend. Let's just say scientifically that that's all possible. Let's just assume it could have happened. The one thing we know for certain about 9/11 is that there is no explanation as to how Building 7 collapsed. There just isn't. It was demolished. It's obvious that that's what happened. And yet, even to this day, we're not able to talk about it. It's considered taboo because we know that if we were to talk about it, we would have to talk about Howard Lutnick and Cantor Fitzgerald. If we had to talk about it, they know that we would be addressing Larry Silverstein and his ownership and the insurance policy he took out on the World Trade Center just weeks before it went down. These are questions that they don't want answered because all roads lead to Israel. We know that. Heck, you only have to look at what happened back in '93 when they attempted to take it down then. There's always going to be misdirection, clandestine operation. Just as the gentleman who was in the CIA, who was talking with Patrick Bet-David, made it very clear. Israelis posing as Palestinians, or Lebanese, or Iranians, claiming that they're the ones who did the deed. That's false flag operation. That's what 9/11 has always been about. We blamed Iraq and Afghanistan. Yet we know, assuming that they were actually on the plane and that they were actually killed, that the terrorists in question were from Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has always been more inclined to support Israel because they're always at odds with Iran. Again, many different layers here. But when Roger Waters starts talking like this, it's a beautiful sight to see.
and Building 7 and the South Tower. Who did it and why? And those are the questions that we need a proper judicial inquiry to find answers to.
I agree. Now, here comes the real meat of that particular discussion.
It got so intense at one point. I was reading that you were banned from certain hotels because the hotel.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. That didn't start happening until 2023, which was the last big tour I did. And both in Europe and in South America particularly, I couldn't find a hotel to stay anywhere in Buenos Aires, or in Colombia, or in Ecuador.
In Ecuador?
Yeah, well, it had just been taken over by Noboa, who, as we know, is a gangster from Miami. So he's who knows what his issues are.
What we know for certain, and we've been talking about this already, and I actually believe that if World War III is going to happen, it's going to probably start in South America, because as we know, the West is fortifying their positions all over the continent, putting in right-wing neocon puppet presidents in every nation surrounding Brazil. Brazil is part of BRICS. BRICS is the future of global politics. BRICS is backed by Russia and China. And they have got the 4th largest population in the world. India, China, pretty sure the US, and then Brazil. I could be off on one. Or maybe there could be third. Point is, there is a reason why they're doing this. There is a reason why we now know that trust in our electoral process, you shouldn't have it. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be involved. But trust in the process? How could you? We've seen enough now to know that very little, if anything, is on the level, because our country is in a lot of trouble, economically, politically, socially. We're in trouble. And that's why all of these proxies are popping up, all those changes. You see it all the time. It's coming so fast, so furious, we can't even stop and recognize it in the moment. I would tell you that Scheinbaum is decent people, but I understand what you're saying. We'll continue.
Yeah. You couldn't stay in a hotel in Ecuador, Colombia, or Argentina because you criticized Israel.
Yes. Oh, Uruguay, Montevideo.
Uruguay. Yeah.
I couldn't stay in Montevideo. We did actually stay in a hotel in Quito in Ecuador for one night, but they had to pretend I wasn't there. You couldn't make it up, could you?
That's a long way from Israel. What is Quito, Ecuador, or Montevideo, Uruguay, or BA have to do with Israel?
There's an Israeli lobby that is very organized in all of those places, and there may well be in other cities in the world as well. Certainly in many other cities. Frankfurt, they tried to cancel my gig in Frankfurt. They did cancel my gig in Krakow in Poland in 2023.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that they wanted to cancel me because I was critical of the genocide, because I'm against genocide and they're not.
What you have to remember about Roger Waters is that he has always been against Israel. This is going back decades and decades. He has always called them out for what they really are. And so when he comes out and speaks against the genocide, he has the credentials to go up against the Zionist state. And that's why they can't deal with him. And this is also why I really give Tucker Carlson a lot of credit. I'm not convinced he's going to run for president. I think he's just come to terms with how influential his position is and how he can use it for absolute good. And I think he's trying to. I do believe that. By having Roger Waters on, he's showing that there's a part of him that truly gets this citizen uprising that's happening right now. And he's not trying to stand in the way of it. He may be trying to protect himself to make sure that he's not on the chopping block because he is part of the elite class, but he's smart. And like I said, kudos to him for giving Roger this platform, which he so richly deserves.
They're in favor of it. That's why they're all quiet. They're silent. They all keep silent. They close their mouths. You know, they won't speak because they know that they'll get the treatment that I get if they open their mouths. There is a very powerful lobby. And it wants Israel to go on being a genocidal apartheid state and to expand and to take over Lebanon and Syria and Jordan and Greater Israel. It's the plan.
That is the plan. That has always been the plan, and that is what we keep emphasizing. This is why they're going to such lengths to try to hold us off here in the States, because they know that we now know what this is all about. This is about the Greater Israel Project. And I can't for the life of me conceive that they really think that this is actually going to happen, that they think that this is even possible at this point, or if it was even possible to begin with. I mean, maybe for a while they were mowing the lawn for so long that they again, this is the thing about Trump, facilitating the revolution. It's like a slow-moving car crash. You can't ignore it. It's right in your face. You can't avoid it. We're looking down the barrel of the gun right now. We really are. So that's just one key part. We've got one more.
By the Israelis. I mean, the Israelis knew they were there, and a bunch of the Israelis who knew it was going to happen got arrested. Actually,
well, they were dancing around,
correct,
correct, congratulating themselves, or whatever it was they were doing.
So the question is, did the Americans and the Israelis have a hand in doing it? Did they allow it to happen? Did they?
Short answer, yes.
Did they have a complex sting operation that went wrong and it happened despite their best efforts? Because this does happen where the FBI, for example, will be following somebody and everyone around him will be an informant. And the idea is to, gather the evidence on him, and then he goes and shoots somebody. And the FBI says, well, we didn't want that. Is it that? I mean, I don't know the answer, but, and I also know, or I believe, that the Building 7 story doesn't make any sense at all. And I don't know why you would attack people who raise questions about something that doesn't make any sense.
The reason that they attack is because, and again, this has always been the case with establishment politics. When they attack, it means you're close to the truth or you're over the target. They don't attack you. They don't come after you if they don't care. This is what I've been emphasizing to people in left politics for the longest time when it comes to energy extraction. The only solution in this era that we're alive in to get off of fossil fuels is nuclear power. And we know that for sure. Why? Because the powers that be only attack nuclear efforts. They also attack high-speed rail efforts. They don't attack solar. They don't attack wind, because they know that they don't have the strength of a grid to actually run small, medium, and large cities. Can't do it. But with nuclear, you can. And they know that. So if you want to get off of coal and natural gas, that's how you do it. And the same is true when you're over the target on a critical issue like endless war, or in this case, support for the state of Israel. When they come for you, like little Ben Shapiro came for the vice president, it's because they're over the target. They've hit the soft spot. And now they're starting to bleed. Once that happens, you can't seal the wound. You can't do it. The wounds are popping up everywhere. To think we've gotten to a point now where Roger Waters and Tucker Carlson can sit down for a conversation and talk about Building 7. Yeah, we're living in a very unique time in history for sure.
But they have. That's not a sign of innocence, right? At all.
Well, I must have heard somewhere, and maybe it was on one of the grapevines of conspiracy theorists out there questioning him, that a couple of the floors in Building 7 were CIA offices.
I think that's true.
I've certainly heard that.
If Tucker Carlson says that the first bottom floors at Building 7 are part of the CIA, that means they are. It's one thing if Roger Waters says it. It's another thing entirely if Tucker Carlson does. And there you have it. So then the natural next inclination becomes, why? Why did Building 7 have to go down? That's a question that people have been trying to answer for the better part of over 3 decades now. We all know the answer. But trying to get the powers that be to admit it, to address it, you can't, because it's again, you'd be over the target. I visited many times Ground Zero. I was at Ground Zero on the 20th anniversary in 21. And I happened to be standing next to an older woman who was alone and was crying. And it turns out that her husband was killed in the attack. And I put my arm around her and she hugged me and just started crying even harder. And to think that it was our own government in conjunction with the Zionist state that did this, that killed so many innocent lives, that completely changed our country, that thought that there was a terrorist around every corner, the anthrax, the red alerts. And for what? What was it all for? Money and power, because that's all it's ever for. And if a bunch of people have to die as a result to satisfy those interests, then that's what happens. Not only does he have the Yankees logo, he's got Dempsey as his name. This is a New Yorker through and through, if there ever was. Silverstein was on the phone all day with his insurance company before Building 7 went down. Pull it!
Well, there was a field officer and an FBI field office, and I think a bunch of different government agencies. I think that's conclusively
no. What we do know certain things that happened because there is evidence. So, for instance, General Wesley Clark's stories about visiting the Pentagon and his meetings in the offices either of Paul Wolfowitz or somebody close to Wolfowitz at the time, where they described the plan, the American plan, the Pentagon plan, the government plan. Whose plan was it exactly? To destroy 7 countries in the 5 years that followed.
Yes.
Of those 7 countries, 5 have gone. There's only Lebanon and Iran left.
Yes.
Standing out of those 7 countries. So, and Wesley Clark he always seems like a fairly kind of down-to-earth, straightforward kind of a guy, and a very fine professional soldier, and somebody who would be unlikely to make this stuff up. But in order to fulfill those ambitions for the new American century, as it was known by the neocons, they needed a Pearl Harbor. But who's the they? Who's the they? Israel, possibly something to do with it. Elements, possibly in the United States government. It must have been. It's a big thing to pull off. And I can sense people now watching this going, but pull off what? They didn't. It wasn't. It just planes flew in and the buildings fell. No, they didn't. That's the one thing that we know for absolute sure, because every single physicist or engineer or architect in the world, they all agreed there is no way the North and South Towers and Building 7 came down because of airplanes hitting them.
And no matter how many different ways that the powers that be try to convince you about what actually went down on 9/11, you can create all different narratives that suits the corporate agenda, that suits the establishment agenda, but something always felt off. And it took a while for us to learn about Building 7. You see, I remember when 9/11 happened and Building 7 going down. But remember, this was still in somewhat of the early stages of the internet era. So what were they saying back in the fall of 2001? What did they say was the reason that Building 7 went down? They said that Building 7 went down because when the towers collapsed, they fell into Building 7 and crushed it in the process. That's what they said. That's what they wanted you to believe was the reason. Now, being 18 at the time, perhaps I was a little naive and I didn't think much of it and didn't dig into it the way that I should have. But looking back on it now, it's obvious that they already had the story in place of how they were going to deduce the explanation that would need to go out there as to why Building 7 collapsed. Instead of saying, we have no idea why it collapsed, we should investigate this and figure it out. No, it became, well, you know, the towers fell and they fell into Building 7, and that's why Building 7 fell apart. So you just know. If your gut's telling you it's an inside job, it was an inside job. And now we know who certain players were involved with it were.
Just not possible.
The first person I ever heard say that this doesn't make any sense, just as a structural matter, can the building come down because of an airplane strike? The first person to say that I know of is Donald Trump, who said that on a morning show. He called in the morning of 9/11 and said, I was there. I'm a builder. I know how those buildings were built. That doesn't make any sense. He said that on there. You can pull up the tape. I think it just happened to be Trump. I mean, it could be anybody with knowledge of building, but that has kind of gotten lost over the years, that structural engineers said this is impossible. What happened? There was a report by a bunch of structural engineers who said that. What happened to them?
Well, nothing happened to them. They still exist. They're all still alive. They're all still perplexed. They're all still wondering why nobody took them seriously, as we all are. We're always like this thing that I showed you earlier where I wrote down that how...
Can you read that and tell us what it is?
Sure.
Now, obviously, there was more to this interview, but I think we covered the most important parts, including the dancing Israelis, which, again, was something that I learned about pretty early on. But here's something that maybe some of you don't remember. And again, this gets back to why we know it was an inside job. At the time, they were not called dancing Israelis. They were called the dancing Muslims. Now, how many of you remember that? Because I remember it very well. This was the official narrative that went out. Now, remember, the thing that's so interesting is that if you look back at the archives, there were certain stories that got out there where they couldn't control everybody, obviously. But they did everything they could to kind of keep the narrative as tight as they could. Now, one of the stories that went out was that it was a bunch of dancing Muslims on 9/11, not dancing Israelis. And we didn't find out about that until later on. But at the time, the narrative was there was a bunch of Muslims jumping up and down celebrating the collapse. That was the narrative. That's what we were fed. Now, of course, we know that that's not true. It turns out that it was dancing Israelis. Could you imagine if that came out at the time? Could you imagine if the majority of the country was fully aware that that's how it went down? And then I'm going to get in front of Congress and tell them we're going to war. We're going to war with Iraq and Afghanistan. They misunderestimated how tough I can be. I think a lot more people would have been questioning the narrative a lot sooner. I think that a lot of people were questioning it. But they were not really sure what direction to go in. And lo and behold, we were told many of these stories. San Francisco mayor told not to fly that day. Larry Silverstein doesn't show up at the office. Howard Nutlick doesn't end up at Cantor Fitzgerald that day as well. There are no coincidences when it comes to this. It just isn't. It's too big. But I will tell you guys, in conclusion to this wonderful interview and story, I knew very early on that there was something about 9/11 that didn't add up, and I was only 18, 19 at the time. And that was when I found out about the stock sell-off of both American and United prior to 9/11. In fact, the massive sell-off was on September 7th, that Friday, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, the only way something like that happens is if somebody knows something. And when you're talking global economics, when you are talking the biggest airlines, now granted, if you go back to 2001, we were still in the somewhat early stages of the Clinton era corporate consolidation as a result of the removal of Glass-Steagall, which took place less than 2 years prior. However, that corporate consolidation was really starting to ramp up as we went forward. But at the time, there were a lot of different airlines that still existed in the United States. But make no mistake, United, American, Delta, and Continental. And eventually United took the lead because they merged with Continental. Point is, these are the biggest airlines in the world. And if there is a massive stock sell-off in that moment, that is a red flag of red flags. And remember, 9/11 happened on a Tuesday, not a Monday. So everybody gets back to the office on Monday, September 10th, which is also the day that Rumsfeld gave his speech regarding the $2 trillion in unaccounted money at the Pentagon. You mean to tell me that no one noticed that there was this massive stock sell-off with United and American? And you mean to tell me that there was never a formal investigation into what went down with that sell-off shortly thereafter? There's never been a formal investigation of the stock sell-off of the two major airlines in the United States. This is why we do what we do. You have to keep digging. And even if it is to the detriment, as it's been for me personally, you guys know about my story. You know what I've been through. It's been hell. But I wouldn't change it for a second because I know it's right. Doing the right thing is half the fight. I don't apologize for anything. I am proud of this channel and what we're trying to do. I am proud of having you guys as an amazing audience because I know we're not alone. We're all looking around at each other and asking ourselves, are we really crazy? Or are the conspiracies actually, there's a great saying about conspiracies. I don't want to say it wrong, but if anybody in the chat knows the exact phrase for a conspiracy is a fact that hasn't been accepted yet, there's a way to say it. It's really good, but it's so true. And so, and you're right, Lisa, the put options as well. That was a big part of it too. Again, there was a professor that I had many years ago, Mr. DeFelice. He was great. And he always had one of the best sayings I've ever heard when it comes to the United States. Money talks and justice walks. And to the detriment of millions, if not billions of people, they will fall on that sword. Roger Waters hasn't. I believe Tucker Carlson is. You can't trust him fully, but you can appreciate what he's doing. And I know that I do. And I hope you do too. Now, I say this because I said this night was going to be interesting. When we think back to the moment where Israel really showed its true colors and how far they'd be willing to go, at least in moments where we were aware. The USS Liberty during the Six-Day War, June 1967, which we all know what the intention was. They were trying to create another false flag like they did with the Gulf of Tonkin. It didn't work. They tried. They got close, but it didn't work. And as a result, it didn't pan out. Now, with the backdrop of all of this, which is where we have, and we're going to bring back our friends Ken Martin and Wally Rashid to talk about JFK. But tonight, we are addressing a very critical story here within that JFK saga. If you remember, the election of 1964, which Kennedy was assuredly going to win re-election for, at least I would believe he would have. I think the election would have been a lot closer. But when you consider that history has shown there's a lot of negative talk surrounding Barry Goldwater, who was the Republican nominee for president in 1964. He got blown out by LBJ. If you've ever seen the 1964 GOP convention, that is where Ronald Reagan became a national figure. A Time for Choosing is the name of the speech. If you haven't heard it, I recommend listening to it. Now, Goldwater is a senator from Arizona, and he lived a long life. He was almost 90 when he passed. You would think during the presidential election of 1988, which was George Bush and Michael Dukakis, that was the first presidential election that I remember. I remember pretty well. You know what I had, guys? This will make you laugh. So in 1988, I was a 5-year-old kid at the time. This was really funny. So we had, my father got me these toys. So what were they? I am sure you all have heard of Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Well, this was even funnier. It was Dukakis and Bush in pajamas with boxing gloves, like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. I remember that like it was yesterday. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. This was the summer of '88. A really unique time. I remember that was the first time we got a cat. It was actually, we got a rescue cat. His name was JJ. This all happened around the same time. In fact, I think it might have been the same night. It was just really, some of those like early childhood memories, you remember them like they were yesterday. And that was one of them that I remembered very well. And there is a clip, and we are going to give a major shout out and credit to Glenn Greenwald. That's who found this clip. This clip, ladies and gentlemen, is from, I don't know if it was Crossfire, and I don't believe it was the McLaughlin group, even though I would know if it was because I know the studio setup. But this is a conversation between Barry Goldwater and Pat Buchanan during election season 1988.
Big, great men in the Congress today.
Oh,
By
there's a
and
few.
large, it's a low-grade stock.
All they're interested in is getting reelected. When they hear a command from Israel, they jump, and as a result, we're losing friends.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Hold it a second, Tom. What do you mean when they hear a command from Israel, they jump?
Well, I think Israel probably has more effect on the Congress than any country in the world, and more effect probably than in some issues than America.
Well, Senator, that reminds me, that hasn't been mentioned in this campaign.
I know it.
We've all watched, you've watched, Mr. Lance has watched, Pat, me, everybody has watched the Israeli soldiers beating up on Palestinians for the last 3 weeks.
This is 1988, mind you. And what I think that they're talking about here is the Intifada that started in 1987. So this would track. This could have been early 1988. So in that case, it definitely would track. And Crossfire, which is actually the show. It's amazing. You know, the one thing I pride myself on when we do the solo show on Saturday is having a lot of continuity and synergy with the clips. Crossfire is how Tucker Carlson made a name for himself in the early 90s. He wasn't on the show yet, but he would be on within the next few years. And if you remember, he was in his early 20s with the bow tie. Crossfire, it was a very popular show at a time when CNN was overseen by Ted Turner. It had not sold out yet to corporate special interests. A lot of that took place over the course of a 2 to 3 year period, which started with the OJ trial and culminated with the Telecom Act in 96, thanks to Bill Clinton. But Crossfire, this was a great debate show. It really did good work here.
Is the Israeli dog, Israeli tail, wagging the American dog?
Something's wagging the American dog. It might be the tail, it might be the leash. I don't know, but they've certainly run this place.
What do you think, very briefly, the United States policy should be toward Israel in the wake of what's going on?
I think we ought to get real tough with them, withdraw all support, till they finally sit down.
Withdraw the $3 billion in aid?
Yes, if necessary. You have to remember that the PLO, in all the history of this world, have never had a piece of land that they could call their own.
Palestinian.
Can you believe this? Can you fucking believe this find? Barry Goldwater, who had a Jewish father, talking about the Palestinian people never having a home, and this is in 1988. This is 38 years ago. But remember, everything started on October 7th, 2023. Don't forget that, guys. It's very important to never question the narrative. Always question the narrative.
People.
That's right. Now,
the Israelis say if you give them the land to call their own, the PLO will arrive, they'll put up the PLO flag, and they'll try to liberate all of Palestine, which means the end of the Jewish state if you do that.
I don't believe that for 1 minute. I think the Jewish armed forces probably are stronger than any combination of countries in that part of the world.
Do you share this view, Bert?
I think Senator Goldwater just put his finger right on an important point, that there has to be something done there in mutual recognition for mutual security, land for peace, whatever the conversation is.
Now, what's even more amazing about this particular clip that you have to remember is that the world was a completely different place 38 years ago. And the fact that this was a conversation that was taking place at that time really goes to show you how much effort the Israel lobby puts into making sure that these conversations never surface, that you never know that they existed. Why do you think they tried to cut Pat Buchanan's legs off when he ran for president just a few years later? Because he took what Goldwater said to heart. He agreed with him. And this is long before anybody really had an idea of just how bad things were. This was before the internet. Very few people knew about any of this. But the people in power, they knew something. They knew that this was really, really bad. Guys, if you haven't smashed that like button, please make sure that you do, as we are coming up on the 2.5 hour mark soon. We're almost, got a little bit more to go, but I bring this up, and the reason I think this is so important. When you want to take out a presidential candidate, when you want to take out an elected official, we're seeing it again. Like I said, continuity, synergy within the conversation. The Democratic establishment is doing it right now. They did it to Plattner. They're now trying to do it to Said in favor of Haley Stevens. And why? Because of who walks the corporate line. And that's what matters. That's the primary objective. And in the case of the 1964 presidential election, in the shadow of JFK's assassination, Barry Goldwater, and it was already well established when JFK was alive, November of '63, that Barry Goldwater was very likely going to be the GOP nominee. So we already knew what the matchup was going to be the following year. And so you got Goldwater, and then you had LBJ, who, in my opinion, I know some people don't like to necessarily hear this that are Democratic sycophants, but if we're looking at cause and effect and the absolute worst that we've ever had in the history of the United States, I believe, along with George W. Bush, Andrew Johnson, Woodrow Wilson, I got to tell you, a lot of the policies that Mr. Clinton passed, he really belongs very high on that list. I know a lot of people are going to want to put George, are going to want to put they're totally going to stick me in the worst possible position. Well, you know, you like tough positions, don't you, boy? But those are the worst, the absolute worst in the history of our country in terms of the consequences of what they did. And I believe LBJ is up there. I've always felt that way. And here's why. Here's a very good reason why I feel that way. How LBJ forged the U.S.-Israel alliance by Ronan Main Price from January of 24. The special relationship between the U.S. and Israel was cemented by the support offered by LBJ throughout the 60s. At 4:35 a.m. on June 5th, 1967, LBJ was woken by a telephone call from his national security advisor. Speaking briefly, Walt Rostow informed the president that war had just erupted in the Middle East over the 6 days. As Johnson watched the conflict from the White House Situation Room, Israel would go on to exert a crushing defeat over its Arab neighbors, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. It's not the full story. The War of June 1967 was a seminal moment that transformed the landscape of the Middle East forever, with Israel's capture and subsequent occupation of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Its shockwaves can still be felt to this day. The mid-60s also marked a clear inflection point for the U.S. posture in the region. Previous presidents had sought to finally balance their policies along regional fault lines and restrain Israeli ambitions. Lyndon Johnson did not. The staunchly pro-Israel policies he implemented during his term of office became the very foundation for what thereafter developed into a multi-decade alliance. Whether it is diplomatic backing or economic assistance, weapons dealing or intelligence sharing, there are few nations that have enjoyed such tight, intimate bonds. Israel's continuing campaign against Hamas, keep in mind this is January of 24, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, statements about the future of Palestine have presented Washington with a dilemma. Israel, once considered an essential Cold War ally in the Middle East, is increasingly looking for like a strategic liability. As many begin to contemplate if Washington should continue to maintain support, it is important to understand when and why this partnership originated. American support for Israel dates back to the very creation of the Jewish state. President Harry Truman had backed the UN partition plan for Palestine in 1947, before later recognizing Israel immediately after its declaration of independence in May of 1948. Yet, for much of the early years, the U.S. was a tentative partner. Both Truman and his two successors in the White House, Eisenhower and Kennedy, were all too aware that embracing Israel too openly would alienate much of the Arab world, and thus they proceeded with caution. The 1950s were several spats between Washington and Jerusalem as Eisenhower attempted to build stability in the Middle East. His administration twice threatened to cut aid to Jerusalem, first over Israeli plans to divert water from the Jordan River, and then because of their attempts to hold on to territory they had captured during the Suez Crisis. Trouble in the Suez, as Billy Joel would say. As the Cold War began to intensify, however, and the Soviet Union strengthened its hand in the region, Jerusalem became an increasingly useful partner. The Kennedy presidency saw the first major American arms sales to Israel, with Hawk anti-aircraft missiles being delivered in 1963. Gee, is it possible that the administration was running clandestine operations behind the president's back? You know, like some of the operations once Reagan became demented in the 80s. Oliver North rings a bell. Kennedy also provided initial security guarantees by privately pledging military support to Golda Meir in the event of any Arab invasion. I don't know. You know, it's funny, these articles, they really like to rewrite history. They don't want to talk about the relationship that was really going on between Kennedy and Ben-Gvir. I got Ben-Gvir. David Ben-Gurion. Oh, you know, they all sound alike. They all look alike. They're all inbred Hicks anyway, but you get the idea. Kennedy still attempted to maintain a balanced stance in the Middle East so as not to jeopardize his relations with the Arab leaders and invite further encroachment into the region by the Soviet Union. He endeavored in vain to curtail the proliferation of Israel nuclear weapons at Dimona, an Israeli city in the Negev desert, by requesting regular inspections, while also providing economic support to Egypt and attempting to build cordial relations with its president, Gamal Abdel Nasser. This strategy saw some success. Nasser was said to have been overcome with sorrow upon hearing the news of Kennedy's assassination. Yes, I'm sure he was. The American policy towards Israel and much of the wider Middle East accelerated quickly after Kennedy's death and Johnson's ascendancy to the Oval Office. Remember, history really likes to paint this idea that Kennedy was pro-Israel and extremely favorable to their cause. We now know that that is an outright lie, and there is a reason they do this, because there is a major conspiracy hanging over Kennedy's assassination to this day. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz claimed in 2018 that Israel has no better friend than the Texan president, and it is not difficult to see why he received such a glowing review. Holding court with numerous influential Jewish American intellectuals such as Arthur Krim, Abe Fortas, and Arthur Goldberg, Johnson had supported every aid package during his time as a senator and majority leader, and had pressed Eisenhower not to sanction Jerusalem in 1956. When president, he enjoyed warm relations with Prime Minister Levi Eshkol and professed to hold deep admiration for Israel and its people. I may not worry as much as Eshkol does about Israel, he told an ambassador, but I do worry as deeply. Johnson's infatuation with Israel was also blended with his personal distaste for Nasser. Viewing the region through the lens of the binary Cold War struggle, Johnson and many of his advisors viewed Cairo as just another Soviet proxy. After initial attempts to placate Nasser with grain deals, Johnson's patience ran thin as Egypt began to assert itself throughout the region. After the burning of an American library in Cairo, the White House cut all aid, and the two presidents became increasingly vocal critics of one another. Johnson branded Nasser as an instrument of the Kremlin, while the Egyptian responded by calling his counterpart little more than a cowboy. Well, he was a cowboy. Underpinning many of the rhetorical barbs were Johnson's strategic objectives for the Middle East. His presidency witnessed steadily increased Soviet military aid to Egypt and Syria as Moscow attempted to fan the flames of anti-West pan-Arab nationalism. Israel was thus seen as an essential Cold War bulwark against the Kremlin's meddling, as well as a vital tool for the securing of the free flow of oil. And there it is. It is always about that good old money and power. To maintain the regional balance of power, Johnson oversaw the sale of more than 200 M48 tanks in '64, despite reservations from the CIA and its national security advisor, McGeorge Bundy. If that ain't a Southern name, I've never seen one. He would also authorize the unprecedented delivery of A-4 Skyhawk and F-4 Phantom planes. When it came to Israel developing weapons of mass destruction, Johnson looked the other way. He never pressured Jerusalem to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and a disputed anecdote claims that he even asked CIA Director Richard Helms, who under oath admitted that there was a conspiracy to assassinate Kennedy in 1979, not to share intelligence on Israel's atomic capabilities with anyone else in his administration. So, if you think, as the Democrats so often like to point out, that the election of '64 was on the level and that the Democrats were just so awesome and powerful, and LBJ was incredible, and that's why they crushed Goldwater. Well, as history is now showing you, the real reason And the main reason why Kennedy needed to be taken out is because LBJ was willing to play ball and Goldwater wasn't. Sometimes it takes a long time to get to the truth about our history. And this is exactly why, as we conclude for the evening, we posted a statement earlier regarding what is going on in Montenegro. And this is happening all over the place. This isn't just one place. This is everywhere. Israelis are finding it very difficult to go places now. And when people recognize them, they call them out. Do I have some sympathy for those who are Jewish and are not involved? Certainly. But this was something that was inevitably going to happen. You see somebody walking around with a Star of David or a high, you know that they're subject to being ridiculed, called out, and given the business as they so rightfully deserve. Now, the Israelis are going to learn the hard way, as I said. It will get worse. It will become more volatile, and they will get what's coming to them. And here's a good example of that in New York.
Don't touch me. Who you think you are? Who the are you?
You know, the one thing that they're going to have a very hard time understanding, and again, this is part of the reason why they're doing it now, they are actually above the law. See, they are chosen, and by such, they can assault you and get away with it, even if it's a woman. And in this case, they decided that, yeah, we're going to hit you, and you're not going to do anything about it. They are so ready, willing, and able to get physical. I wish that they would just get physical with someone like me. Why aren't there others out there that just put them in their place? Now that's starting to happen.
You touching me? The whole world hates Israel. Come. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Do it. Do it. Do it. I wasn't touching you. I wasn't. I kill you.
I kill you. I kill you. You think he's lying? You think that? Let me tell you. He may be acting tough and he may be saying that I kill you because he's actually capable of killing somebody with his bare hands. No, but what he is probably capable of is connecting with the right people who could kill that person. Blow them up. Poison them. Who knows? But remember, they don't talk like this without a way of backing it up. He means it. I kill you. What he really wants to say is, I can kill you and I can get away with it. And for a while, that's probably been the case. I would have loved for somebody like him to say that to me. And be like, okay, give me your best shot. This is how they should be met everywhere. This is how they should be treated every day, all day, for the rest of their lives. Let them go into hiding. Let them crawl under boards. You know, you really want to live the Holocaust existence? Okay, great. You can live it. You're probably going to have no choice. And it will be 1,000% deserved and earned.
You'll kill me. You'll kill me. I kill you. Yeah. Say it loud and say it clear. We don't want no Zionists here. Say it clear and say it loud. God, sir, you make us proud.
That's the way it should be. And remember, the only reason this happened is because, and again, if I'm looking at New York, again, I'm from Jersey, so I know the city pretty well. If I'm looking at it from where this was taking place, it looks to me, and I could be wrong, but this may have very well been in front of the New York Public Library, and they were probably, either doing a rally on behalf of Palestine, or it looks like it could have been a rally on behalf of Iran. And of course, these Zio scum came up to him, or Lebanon, correct? And they said something. These people are not out there searching for Zionists. The Zionists will come and find them. That's what they do. I think they really are going to have a hard time accepting that this is changing and it's accelerating. It's not getting quieter. We reached the point of no return. We are now here. And this, for our friends in the UK who are staying up late, this is from earlier today.
Why are you supporting terrorism? Sanction Israel now!
I mean, look at the size of that flag. That is just, think about it. I mean, that is really impressive. You gotta love it. And as I've been saying, appreciate you, Lee. I don't know if you just woke up or are going to sleep, but I appreciate you being here. But here's the thing, Hot Dog. This is what you have to remember about the Brits. A lot of them take after their Irish brethren, their Scotch brethren. They're fighters. Not all of them. You know, there's a very Western part of British culture for sure. But there's also the part of British culture that is fully behind liberation and working class ideals. These people have a lot of courage to do it in the UK. That's a lot of, that takes guts. And eventually, enough people are just not going to care. They just will not care. You want to throw us in jail? You want to get us fired from our jobs? Whatever. We cannot be party to this anymore. And that's starting to happen here in the States as well. So that matters big time. Now, I don't remember what this couple said at the beginning. I want to just freeze it.
Why are you supporting terrorism?
Why are you supporting terrorism? I don't know. You look like a terrorist to me with that. You want to get pegged for the way you look? I mean, come on, man. Think about it. Why are you supporting terrorism? I'm glad that they're afraid. This should be the least of their concerns. As I said, and I don't want to subject people to the horrible imagery, but these bastards, these people right here, do you think they give one fucking iota about the chicken pox outbreak amongst children in Gaza? This is why we said it wasn't the bombs that was going to kill the majority of the Palestinians. It was the famine that was going to get them. The lack of clean water. You know, like Ben Gvir so gleefully celebrates, so does Smotrich. Yeah, we cut off their water supply. What the fuck did you think was going to happen? I hope that every last one of them at some point feels a sense of shame, emptiness, and hell, because that's what they all deserve. And if nothing else, we have to keep fighting no matter how hard, no matter how detrimental it might be. Because as Jen often says, we have to bear witness. That is our cross to bear. That is our responsibility. Because as Eisenhower said many years ago when he liberated Dachau, document it, take pictures, write about it, do everything you need to do to make sure that this is all kept relevant, because there will be a day that will come where someone will say that it didn't happen. And that's been the problem with so many people who want to just make it a Jew problem. Yeah, we might as well just eradicate all of them, right? No, as we've said, this is a class war. And in some cases, it's a racialized war. That's true too. There is no doubt that the trouble that is coming for the Zion Nazis, it's going to be really, really bad. And when they're looking around wondering, oh, so you mean to tell me that we put these laws in place to basically throw you in prison if you question Israel, and yet they're still questioning Israel, and they're still fighting against the Zionist state? And we now see that no matter how much money you throw at this issue, you can't solve it because the people don't want it anymore. You better all find your way to Argentina if you can, because that's the only thing you got going for you now. And they might very well. That might happen. But we as Americans have an obligation to be able to not just put differences aside, but look ahead to the future and see how we're going to thrive as a nation. Because we're entering a new history, a new phase of the American experiment. Our days as the world hegemon and the dominant global superpower is soon to be over. If we're not careful, we'll lose it all. I don't want to lose it all. I still love my country. I don't love the people who run it. In fact, I hate them. And so should you. So, the identification of what this country can be, it should be. As Thomas Paine said, we have it within us to make the world over again. We are long past due for that. It's our job to facilitate this revolution, however it will come about. But let's make sure that we do. For the final time this evening, we have a few more super chats. Let's get to you guys before we get out of Dodge. I want to thank you all for your amazing support. And again, just sticking with us for the entire evening, despite the ups and downs. You guys have been great. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99. If Anthony Aguilar is watching, you were amazing with the Hodge twins. And unlike many other veterans who are grifters, you are a humanitarian, deserve more. He is amazing. I have not seen the interview. I will check it out. I'd like to cross-pollinate with the Hodge twins. I think it'd be a fun conversation. I think we can do that. Let's see if we can make it happen. Shatadan with the $20. Great to see you, my friend. You should look into the Isaac Accords if you haven't already. It's a Latin American Abraham Accord, so Israel can have a command and control center to our south in case we ever break from Israel and be in striking distance. Hey, they're doing something in South America, and so that certainly wouldn't surprise me. I will look into the Isaac Accords. I appreciate it. Alex got mittens with the $5. They may call us conspiracy theorists, but never liars. That is correct. Very true. Red Amy with the $19.99. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for being an amazing supporter of our channel. We love having you here. Alex got mittens with the $2. Please update the rage meter. Update? Oh, you mean upload? Update. All right. You want the rage meter before the night is out? I guess everybody had a little bit of dose of anger with everything we had to go through on this evening. That's for sure. Hope you liked it. Libertarian Social Dem with a 199. Krav Maga is for losers. They're total losers, really big losers. The biggest losers you've ever seen, really terrible people. And finally, H299 with the 999 super sticker. Thank you very, very much. And we thank all of you for being an amazing group, amazing supporters. You know, even though I can't really pay too much attention to the chat, I do the best I can when I have a minute. I hope you guys all enjoy the conversations that you have. And the thing I really like about our chat is that I know that it's sort of a hodgepodge. It's all different colors of the political spectrum rainbow, if you will. Everybody doesn't fall into one specific ideology or category. People see certain issues differently than others. But I think there's a universality that has occurred within this group. I think people feel at home here on this channel, and that means a lot to me. I'm working towards a lot of big things in the future, and I definitely agree. It's again, anytime I see that, it's a reminder of why we do what we do. I hope you all enjoyed this. Patty, I'm glad you liked it. And you're a really great person, Patty. I hope you support me because I'm really amazing, really incredible. It is a melting pot, as Nathan says. And Piano Man is right. In the grand scheme of where we are winning this fight. We have come a long way in less than 3 years. The thing that kills me, that kills us all, if you can let the ads play, please do. It actually helps the channel, believe it or not. If it's a long ad, no. But if it's 30 seconds or less, it's a big help to us. Keep that in mind. The reason it hurts is because we wish we could be doing more for the Palestinians and the Lebanese. And we can't. And that's the part that hurts. So I don't want people to get down. There will be a reflection point in the future where we'll question whether we could have done more, whether we did enough. But we have definitely changed the narrative. And if we played a small part in allowing that to happen and helping make that happen, then I know we did right. And we'll keep doing it because it's the right thing to do. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you all. We appreciate you all. We will see you Monday with Shama Sawant and Free Palestine. Good night, guys.